Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us this Monday afternoon as we are watching together Day 6 in the Poison Playbook murder trial for a former sports scout, Blaise Taylor. This is all happening in Nashville, Tennessee. He was also a college football player who was accused of poisoning his chef girlfriend, Jade Benning. She was a woman he was seeing. She was also 5 months pregnant with someone that he believed was his child. According to the prosecution, her unborn baby died as a result as well. The state's case ended on Saturday with emotional testimony from people who personally knew the victim and the defendant, including Taylor's college girlfriend, who testified that she got an abortion of their child back in a time when they were in college. And she also talked about helping him set up an abortion for another woman he was seeing.
He was Googling things, so he was looking stuff up to figure out how she, like if there was something he could do to make her have an abortion, and asked me if I could get the abortion pills and he could make her take them or put it in her drink.
The state's case then ended with tearful testimony from Jade Benning's mother, who said that Jade told her that Taylor was adamant about not having a baby initially.
And when you say she told you he did not want the baby, what did she say?
That he wanted her to have an abortion.
Did he kind of give her, I guess, did she feel like she had some choice, or was that a definitive?
If she had the baby, he wanted nothing to do with the baby. He didn't want it to have his name. He didn't want the child to ever know who he was.
The defense, however, disagrees. They say that over time, Blaise Taylor was open to being a father and starting a life in that way with the victim. Let's get you back into court now, because it's now the defense's case. They've called multiple witnesses to the stand today, and right now we are listening to the defense's forensic toxicologist.
That case. So in this case, I believe it was around 1,900 pages to review. You have every test that was ran on it. You have all of their standards, which are the calibrators, which allow you to put a quantitation number to something. It also includes the quality controls, and it includes this case specifics data.
And did you have an opportunity to review the litigation packet for toxicology report 231226889?
I did.
What, if anything, did you find as a result of reviewing that report?
That it, looking at the, and I don't have it up here, and I didn't bring all of it, but the request was signed to be relinquished from the medical examiner's office on 3/31. It was received at NMS, I believe, on 4/4. With any kind of blood sample or even just tissue, anything that's biological, it needs to stay refrigerated. For multiple reasons. It helps to slow down any kind of growth or breakdowns, preferably to be frozen, but it helps to reduce that. And then looking at when it left the medical examiner's office, I presume it arrived with the body. Part of my past experience is I did medical examiner work, and we would get antemortem tubes with our postmortem samples to look at and compare. And when we would get that, they would be multiple tubes to choose from. And so I don't know if there were multiple tubes sit in this case, and this is the one that they chose. But it was collected on 2/25, and it doesn't, and as far as I can tell, arrived to the medical examiner until 3/7. So I don't know how it was stored, who had access to the sample. It was collected for medical purposes, so I don't know what was done at the hospital for testing, opening, who had access to it there, how much blood was removed, did they spin it down at all, anything that could have happened to that tube prior to it arriving at the medical examiner's office.
So thank you. So are you stating that you found that there was an issue with the chain of custody with this particular sample?
Yes. And the medical records also state that they couldn't identify a chain of custody, which is why they contacted the PD to have the PD come draw their sample to establish a chain of custody, and that was after the sample.
So did you ever find in your review of any of the materials anything that could establish a chain of custody that would be sufficient, in your opinion, in regards to the ANAB standards?
The laboratory maintained a chain of custody, and that's where the chain of custody started.
What about previous to the time before it got to the laboratory or arrived there?
I don't believe I've had any documentation for that.
Was there anything else that you noticed about this laboratory report that you found issue with?
I notated that there was no seals on the tubes when they arrived at NMS. There was no evidence tape over it. There was nothing to seal it. Not saying it was open and spilling everywhere. I'm not saying that. The sample would have been closed because there was notation of no spillage. But there was nothing over top of the tube and a date and an initial to make sure that it hadn't been tampered with or hadn't had anyone had access to it prior to it arriving to the laboratory.
Is that something that ANAB requires of an accredited laboratory?
No, it doesn't require it to be that. It's just required that they document how it was received.
What do you find is best practice when you're dealing with these types of forensic toxicology tests, especially in criminal cases?
In my experience, we've received our samples for forensic toxicology to be sealed, dated, and initialed by whoever collected it for the integrity of the sample.
And was that done here?
It was not.
What type of tubing was the blood or the vial of blood? What type of tubing was it packaged in?
It was in a clear plastic tube, which would have no preservatives. So if there was a dirty collection, meaning they didn't have the site clean and some bacteria got in, there's nothing to even slow down bacteria growth or bacteria formation. And there's also nothing to slow down or retard any of the degradation of any of the drugs that would have been present.
Are there, if you could educate the jury, and we've all had our blood taken before, are there different types of tubes that are utilized to preserve whatever the sample is, whether it's blood, urine, whatever that is? Are there different type of tubes for that purpose?
Yes, there's different color top tubes. Ones that I'm familiar with from working in the laboratory, we saw tiger top, we saw blue top, purple top, and those are all unique to the medical field of what they're looking for to test. So each of those have a different preservative in them depending on what the medical need is out of that sample. The most common one used in forensic toxicology is the gray top tube because it has potassium fluoride or potassium oxalate and sodium fluoride, and both of those help to slow down or retard the formation of bacteria, as well as help to preserve the blood specimen as best that it can.
Now, was this sample actually preserved with the proper tubing?
Not for forensic testing.
So, did you find that as a result of the issues, well, let me ask you this, were there any other issues that you found with this particular vial of blood?
I think that those are the main ones that I found.
At some point, were you able to ascertain the levels of concentration for this particular vial of blood in terms of what it was looking for? What exactly was this test looking for in regards to this toxicology report, I should ask?
So it was looking for cocaine in the products, which is what it's listed as, which is the cocaine and the metabolites. And the blood was also looking for designer opioids, which are going to be looking for your more typical illicit fentanyls and illicit opioids. This did not look for the actual drug of fentanyl.
And so are you stating that the where we see the testing designer opioids, that does not include fentanyl?
It does not.
Did you see anywhere in this particular report where it was asking for a fentanyl test?
I do not, and they also didn't order a general screen that you typically see with forensics post-mortem that we saw in the liver, which is a very broad, looks for multiple substances, and I believe there was a note in there that it was a direct reflex for cocaine in the designer opioids because they were nervous about the volume of blood that they had left for testing. So they directed the sample instead of taking out of the normal flow of how a sample would have been received and processed.
And were there results as a result of the testing for this particular report? Did it yield any results?
It did.
And what results did it yield?
We have benzylecanine, which is the first major metabolite out of cocaine, and cocaine, which is the parent drug, and then ercanine methyl ester, which is a secondary metabolite out of the parent cocaine.
Well, let's hit a pause button because we do have to get to our break. First, let's talk about this case with criminal defense attorney Silva Mangardachian. It's good to still have you on, Silva. And there's a buzzword that I keep listening to from inside of that courtroom, this toxicologist on the stand, and it's cocaethylene. That's something that the defense is really hanging their hat on. They mention it to these jurors in opening statements, and we've seen it peppered through in their cross-examination. It's essentially the metabolite of cocaine that happens only when it's mixed with alcohol. The state's witnesses have downplayed it. They say there's really barely a trace there. It's so low, some of them didn't even put it in their report. But the defense says, no, this is huge. What do you think?
Wow. Okay, so Julia, first of all, again, thank you so much for having me on. And this is where I think the defense is doing a great job. First of all, Dr. Melissa is the best defense witness so far. And here's the interesting thing about the cocoethylene, right? It is a substance that is created when you mix cocaine and alcohol, and it makes a really toxic third substance in the body. And that can lead to awful effects, from heart attack to stroke. It is a horrific way to suffer and die. But here's the issue. And also, Dr. Melissa is doing a great job showing some tests were lacking. We don't even know if there's fentanyl in the system, which would be an automatic death. The problem is there was an insane amount of cocaine found in the victim's system. And we had the prosecution's forensic toxicologist saying that when they were evaluating her, it was a ridiculous amount of cocaine. And their witness said that as you said, Julia, the cocoethylene in their expert's testimony was so minute that this third toxic substance wasn't even an issue in the death. So we have a wonderful thing that the courties know, the fight between the experts. Who will the jury believe? Will they believe a prosecution expert who's saying, look, there wasn't enough of this third toxic substance to even make issue of it? Or Dr. Melissa, who's saying, look, you guys, that was found. It is toxic. It can kill someone. It's a true 100% traditional battle of the experts, Julia. So I'm very curious to see who the jury will believe. And I wish I was in the courtroom to assess their credibility, because there's nothing like seeing them in person to evaluate their expertise and their truthfulness and how much they know.
Yeah, and I wish I was watching these jurors watch these experts to see if they're seeming to gather what is being talked about, because it is very scientific. Speaking of the jury, we were able to get from the team that's there inside of the courtroom a breakdown of what we have in terms of the demographics. This is a jury made up of 7 men. One of those men is African American, and 9 women. 4 of those women are African American. So we do have some alternates in there. 16-person jury panel in total. 12 will be deliberating this case. 4 are alternates. And we don't have the age range. You know, I would have wanted to know that as well, Silva, because I think that could have a bearing on this when we're talking about friends and how they reacted to this issue coming over and maybe cleaning up, and the question of whether or not they cleaned up more than just what was turned over to police. Your reaction to the jury makeup and whether you think the defendant will testify.
Look, it's a good jury makeup. I would love that as a defense attorney. You have a cross community. You have African Americans on the jury. You have a great mix of men and women. We want a jury of our peers, right? We want a good mix. Here's the thing, Julia. It's really going to come down to, is it necessary? Of course, we all know, and the courties out there know too, it's always best not to have your client testify. This is a case where I think if the defense can really put into place, there is no direct evidence link between my client and the death. This is lacking, the string that connects them when it comes to direct evidence. No substance is found in the house. There's no toxicology that connects the defendant with the murder. That's going to be imperative, but now they're looking at their jury. And I think the key is, does the defense see the jury connecting with their defense case thus far, which has been weak until Dr. Melissa, right? I would be curious to see how the jury's reacting to my defense case, and then ask my client, do you want to testify? It's your constitutional right, though I believe we have enough and it's not necessary. He's really going to have to answer to a myriad of issues. But Julia, that psychologist that testified that we can't understand what she was trying to say, I'm wondering if it was setting up his testimony, because what was the other purpose of her testifying other than maybe he will explain why he felt so troubled on that key date of March 8th? I'm really curious if they're going to connect the dots through his statements.
That is a good observation. We're going to find out together. No colloquy yet. They haven't asked him in open court whether or not he wants to testify, but we know that is coming soon. Silva, stand by. Let's get to our break. When we come back, more of that testimony in the defense case happening in Nashville, Tennessee.